Yesterday, I heard you talking about or the clip online on YouTube. You mentioned children with long COVID, and I'm really glad you brought up long COVID because most political commentators I listen to who bring it up either bring it up, in passing, or bring it up and mainly only talk about the loss of taste and smell, or just some of the less. It's just not the whole picture when it comes to long COVID. So I was hoping I could talk to you about my experience with long COVID to try to raise awareness.
Sure, please do.
Okay, so I'm 19 years old and I'm a college student. My name's Paul. Just a year and a half ago, I caught COVID. This is before vaccines were widely available. And then immediately after my recovery, the 2-week recovery period, I started having some really bizarre symptoms, heart palpitations, fluttering of the heart, fatigue, neurological symptoms like numbness of the feet, etc. And over time, I was kind of wondering what it was. This is before long COVID was very well known. And then, for those of you that are listening, I guess, that don't know, long COVID, the official...
Why do Bombas socks feel so good? Is it because we use the smartest design and best materials to make them the most comfortable socks ever?
Hold on.
That's part of...
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Where did I leave off?
You were explaining what long COVID was.
Yeah, so post-acute sequelae of COVID, or long COVID, is a post-COVID condition that can arise from your acute infection. So it's been about a year and a half since I've had it, and I've recovered or improved a little bit, but not overall. And while the majority of people that get long COVID get, loss of taste and smell, or other common symptoms, as one of my doctors that I've spoken to has put it, there's a wide array of symptoms that you can get from this disease, and many don't recover in 6 months. Many recover in a year or more. That's the thing, though. Because the virus is so new, not many people really know much about it. There's a few theories as to what causes long COVID. Some people say that there's such thing as viral persistence theory, where pockets of the virus remain in your body, like in your stomach or in your eyes, for large periods of time, which explains the symptoms. Some people think that it's microclotting in the bloodstream that cause inflammation. Some people think it's an abnormally long immune response resulting in a multi-system inflammatory syndrome. No one really knows. It could be multiple of these things. It could be all of these things, or it could be one of these things for each person. Overall, long COVID seems to be different for each person. And I've spoken to some long haulers, some that I know in person in my day-to-day life, some that I've met online in support groups. But overall,
have they
not being? Yeah.
Is there, and I know that there was just a study that came out just a couple of days ago where they had come up with basically 4 different, I think they looked at about 200 people who had long COVID, and they found that the people who had long COVID had, at least 1 or 2 of these elements potentially. In terms of predicting whether someone will get long COVID, would be either the presence of autoantibodies, which sort of like lupus apparently, where your immune system attacks your own body. The second factor was the presence of Epstein-Barr virus. The reactivation. That may be reactivated in people. The third was, I think, the size of the viral load in the blood, and the final was if you had type 2 diabetes. does your doctor have a sense that you had any of these sort of these conditions before you got COVID?
No, before long COVID, I had no pre-existing conditions. I went to the gym and I ran pretty frequently.
You know, and so like, what kind of treatment do you get from the doctors? Are they just sort of like, you know, I would imagine even the best of physicians at this point are just sort of like reading as much as they can and trying a bunch of different therapies because it is so new.
Yeah, so that's the thing. It's really tricky because I'm lucky enough to have family and friends and doctors that, you know, believe me and support me. So whenever I've gone to like one of my doctors, like to talk about my condition, basically the most they could do was offer me compassion and basically like say, maybe try to give me a drug that's on the market, like for my heart palpitations, a beta blocker to prevent, abnormal heart rhythms, that sort of thing. But they offered things to try to treat the symptoms, but not the condition. On the other hand, though, there are a lot of people that weren't as lucky as I am, and they were gaslit, like, to all hell. Like, I've spoken to people that, you know, that have doctors that essentially, like, they didn't say it's verbatim, but they essentially said, have you considered that you're faking this condition? And that's part of the reason why I wanted to raise awareness for long COVID, because the more and more it's talked about, the more it's normalized and the more it can be researched.
And this is going to end up being a significant problem, I think, from a healthcare perspective. Like, I mean, we could have potentially, what do we got? Like 75 million have been, been infected with COVID.
The minister of Finland says long COVID could become it's the country's largest chronic disease.
I mean, I
read about that.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see. I mean, and there really isn't a hard and fast. There's different studies that have shown anywhere from 5 to 20% of people get long COVID, and then long COVID can, last anywhere from, 3 to 6 to 9 to months to we'll find out how long. And if we're talking anywhere from 5 to, even if you just assume 10% of 74 million people infected in this country, we're talking 7.5, maybe. Yeah. Ultimately, we're going to have 10, 12 million people who. I mean, it's a real problem, and I wish you the best of luck. Did you ultimately get vaccinated? I mean, at one point I remember reading, and I didn't see any studies on it, but I do remember reading that, in some instances, the vaccination helped, or monoclonal antibodies after the fact helped. Have you had, what's your been experience with that?
No, yeah. So I got double vaccinated pretty early on into my long haul. I also got my booster a month ago. It didn't really help for me. I know for some people it does, but that's why it helps some people and why it doesn't help some other people is pretty. It's not really known as to why. How much time do you think I have left to speak? Because there's a few more things I'd like to bring up.
Go ahead. You got a couple more minutes.
All right, cool. So, when it comes to, you mentioned before that, Emma mentioned that in Finland, that the minister said...
Yeah, the health minister, I meant to say. Yeah.
Well, overseas, it's being talked about much more than it is in America. In England, I'm not sure if this is still accurate, but I've read some reports from English news sources that around 1 million people in England altogether are long haulers, to different degrees, of course. Some people, have relatively minor symptoms. Some people are, completely bedbound and entirely disabled. I guess, I'd be about in between. But it's the range as to, how it can vary. When people say there's millions of long haulers, that is true, but there are different types and it's different severities. So that is one of the things I wanted to mention. And then the other thing is, suicide rates and mental health among long haulers. Over time, more and more long haulers have been committing suicide because they think there's no hope.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely, horrifying. A lot of people are getting desperate too. People are trying things that have no basis in science to try to get them better. I've tried some experimental treatment options. I've experimented with different medications that have been prescribed to me, as long as my doctor said it's safe. And some have helped a little, some haven't. But the point still stands that for some people it's going to take a long time to get better, and that without proper research on this virus, some people they're going to be with this for a long time, and possibly with long-lasting health effects for the rest of their life. So, I guess that's about it. When I saw your segments on the kids with long COVID, that broke my fucking heart, because I'm 19. I'm old enough to rationalize and understand what's going on with me. With a 5-year-old who has no clue what's happening to them. I don't know. It's horrible. So.
Well, let me ask you this, lastly, is there a site online? Are there Facebook groups? Where are
Reddit.
their support groups that if anybody's listening, they have long COVID and they need some help, where might people go based upon your experience?
Okay, folks, I dropped something. So there's one particular website that I find is, I'm not a part of it. I'm kind of doing a bit better in terms of mental health as of recently, so I've been I kind of left. But there's a group called Survivor Corps. It's survivorcorps.com, and they mainly talk about COVID survivors. That's their main, those are their constituents, and they talk about long COVID and all sorts of things relating to that. There's also I feel the need to bring this up. There is a subreddit called just r/COVID long haulers. Some people have good experiences. Some people have good experiences with it. I personally left it after a while. It is a support group, but there are a lot of people that sometimes speak really negatively, and it can get really depressing sometimes. Okay. So I'm not saying to avoid it, but I'm saying if you go on there, just be aware. Yeah.
Someone just IM'd that Ezra Klein had a good show on it called Long COVID and the Blind Spot of American Medicine on his podcast. And Matt just asked, too, if you've heard of the Long COVID Alliance.
I have, yeah.
Have you had any experience with it?
I haven't. Now that you bring up the Long COVID Alliance, there is one more thing I should bring up. Certain hospitals throughout the country have the Long COVID clinics. The hospital group, Northwestern Medicine, they have one. As of now, what they do is essentially, if you join that group via your hospital, from my knowledge and from my experience, they just provide you with doctors from different professions, like a neurologist and a cardiologist, to try to help you with help you manage your symptoms. Obviously, they're not going to give you a cure, but they'll that way they can monitor your symptoms and get data on it too. So that is another thing.
All right. Well, listen, I really appreciate the call and
Thanks
the
so
information, and you probably helped a bunch of people. So really, thanks very much for calling.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Yep, hang in there.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Bless you, man, because there's a large coordinated campaign by libertarian think tanks ready to deny this stuff, and it's only going to get more and more pronounced. So we're going to need to be fighting this for a long time. So.
It's like a cold. It's like a cold we hear. And even since the beginning of this, the conservative media ecosystem has been trying to downplay, it's like the flu or whatever. Long COVID is not even something that's come out of one conservative commentator's mouth. Not once. Not once. And this is going to be affecting millions and millions of people worldwide and in the U.S. for the next few years. And then it's going to be who could have seen this coming, or for the conservatives, it's just going to be, all right, fend for yourself.
Yeah, it's all in their head. That's what they're going to say.
All the talk about the mental health too aspects of the lockdown, like just bullshit. Yeah. There's no real genuine concern about anybody's mental health.